Master Your Business Development Plan with Steve Fretzin, episode 212. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. And I know it's amazing, even though we didn't do the interview yet. How awesome is that? It's because I have an amazing guest for you. And this gentleman has blown me away in just the one conversation that we had. And I can't wait for him to blow your minds in the conversation we're going to have together. So Steve Fretzin, actually, I learned about him from a post that my friend, I think it was Jordan Ostroff, posted on social media, something about something really cool that Steve did for him after his interview on his podcast. And I was like, hey, I'll get in on that. And that's how we got connected. So it's a very interesting way how it happened. But that's what happens in this world, right? In social media, and these connections just happen. And then you connect on Zoom, and hopefully one day we'll connect in person. We'll be able to shake hands. But Steve's a really cool dude. Why? Because he is the president of Fretzin Incorporated, but that doesn't tell you anything. But I will tell you that he's an author, business development coach for lawyers, business development. We just had this conversation in the green room. Sales. He helps you make sales without feeling all icky and sticky about it. That's basically it. He's a coach that helps you make sales. So if you want more clients, if you want to make sales, if you want to convert more of your consults into paying customers, then you want to pay attention to this conversation today, because I am sure that if you have your notebook in hand, you will walk away with a strategy and a plan to start to move the needle in that direction and increase your percentage, your close rate. We'll talk to Steve about what's a healthy close rate. What should you be expecting? What should you be doing? And maybe how do you troubleshoot that and figure out where it's going? So let's see where this conversation goes. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to bring Steve on in just a moment. But before I do, let's hear a word from our sponsors. Please show them your love. They make the show possible. So if it's anything that might be applicable to you, definitely check them out. I know that you might be on the treadmill, driving your car, taking a shower, whatever it is that you do when you listen to our show. But make a note for yourself, make a mental note, and go check them out. Here we go. Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. To learn more, go to profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. Profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse.
Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI.
And we are back. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Moshe.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I know this stuff can be time consuming. We can have a lot of these conversations, but for me, I dedicate my Thursdays to podcast guest interviews, and it is my favorite day of the week. I really just love getting behind the microphone, having these conversations and learning in the process of helping others learn. So, I'm a student here too, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you about sales because, hey, who doesn't need more clients? So before we start talking about what your expertise is, I'd like to know your backstory. Tell us a little bit more about who Steve Fretzin is, because my listeners want to know that first.
Well, I'll give you the shortest possible version, which is starting off by telling you I'm not a lawyer. I never thought I would work with lawyers. I never thought lawyers needed to learn business development, sales, marketing, any of it. My father's a retired attorney, and he went his entire career with plenty of business and plenty of friends and never needed anything. So getting into my own business in 2004, focusing on entrepreneurs, that was really my target. So anyone that was building a company, that was really who I was working with. And the thing that I wanted to do differently than everyone else was really focus on what I call sales-free selling. So when you mention icky sticky and people that want to go out and make a pitch, I'm very anti-sales. I think people at this stage hate being sold to. They hate salespeople. They never want to be put in a corner to, get convinced of anything. So that's just not how buyers play ball anymore. So the concept worked really well in that space. 2008 hits, and sure enough, one of my clients, very successful, says, "Hey, I've got a lawyer friend that I think you should be talking to. He really needs your help." Started working with one lawyer, then two, then three, then a firm, then another. And it just went on and on and on. And here I am telling these lawyers all about specialization and niching down and how to be successful. And I hadn't pulled the trigger myself. So it took me about 2 years. And I looked at my numbers. About 80% of my business was lawyers and law firms. And I said, you know what? It's time. So I actually changed the name, and not many people know this, but the name of my company before was Sales Results Inc. And if you're an entrepreneur, you love that name because it's got sales, it's got results, it's got everything, right? But lawyers are so terrified of the word sales because it's so either beneath them or so scary to them or so aggressive in just the language that they call it marketing, they call it business development, anything but the word sales. Therefore, I turned my company into Fretzin Inc. as a way to soften the blow for the little dandelions out there, the lawyers that hate the word sales. So no problem. And that's what I've been doing for the last 12, 13 years, is just actively spending every day helping lawyers in every practice area, from no book to, $5-6 million and higher, generate more revenue in less time and less effort, which is really what it's all about for lawyers these days.
Yeah, Steve, I'm excited to jump into that topic with you, but I want to backtrack for a moment on this idea of sales being a scary word or something that lawyers don't use, and instead they call it intake or business development, or you even said marketing. Honestly, I think it's important for our listeners to understand why the legal space has not used the word sales and how powerful it can be to just start using a particular word when you're dealing with something. So the legal industry used to be one where the only way you found out about what attorney you should use for a specific thing was to ask around in your social circles. That was the only way to find a lawyer. Lawyers were not allowed to advertise. They were not like that or the yellow pages, and you were literally calling law firms. But chances are you found out about the lawyer from somebody in your church, somebody in your, in your country club, somebody in your kayaking club, or whatever it is that the thing that you do, you found out about the lawyer from there. You were not thinking, oh, I'm going to shop around. I'm going to go to 5 different lawyers and get the cheapest price. you walked into the office expecting to do business with that lawyer, and it was just a question of where do I sign and how much money do I have to start squirreling away to make this thing go away, or to win, whatever it is that I'm dealing with. So you didn't have to sell somebody because there was no competition. Your competition was only your competition if you were in the same church or the same temple, right? Other than that, you didn't compete against each other because different people were walking in your different doors. And professional services was just, hey, I'm going to focus on delivering, and the clients are just going to keep coming in because I am active in these other areas. And that's naturally going to have these relationships where ultimately that's going to draw referrals and it's going to bring business. We have moved to a day and age where the consumer is no longer finding the lawyer that way. Yeah, some of them still are, but many of them are reading blog post articles. They're watching YouTube videos. They're doing Google searches. They're active on Facebook and social. And they're people on Facebook, their friends on Facebook know they're getting divorced before they do. Their friends on TikTok know that they're going to be bankrupt before they do, because they see the things that they're posting and the things that they're doing. And they could tell them, hey, the writing's on the wall. You should probably find yourself a bankruptcy attorney. But if you start marketing on Facebook and you start finding those people the same way that their friends know what's going to happen in their life before they do, you can also, and you can prep them and you can get them ready. And now they're a potential client for you. But what happens is that all of a sudden, we now have to make an effort to find clients. We have to now do something about it. And now people are not coming in saying, where do I sign? They're coming in saying, are you the attorney for me? Is it the right price? Is it the right offer? Is it the right, and all of a sudden we have to sell ourselves. So I think it's important to understand the history, because if we don't embrace the word sales, then we're fooling ourselves into thinking I'm just going to hold consults and I'm going to hope for the best, because that way doesn't work anymore. Your percentage is going to continue to decrease as to how many of these people you close into clients, and you're going to have to hope and pray for more leads, or you're going to have to actively try to find more leads. But the real hole in the bucket is in the consult, and you not understanding how to position yourself, have that conversation, and be able to close the deal. And that's why I'm excited for the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that lawyers struggle with the word sales and that aspect of the job is that from the time that they're in law school and when they get out, they're definitely put up on a pedestal. I mean, the law is something sacred. The law is special, just like a doctor is a special thing, because these are people that save lives, or these are people that make the rules and the laws and help people abide by them. So sales has always been down here, right? I mean, the lawyer's been up here, sales been down here. And when someone's a salesman, some people are very proud of it and some people try to hide it. Maybe it depends on what they're selling or how successful they are. But the idea that a lawyer is going to say, I'm a salesman, goes completely against the grain. And so anything they can do to take action on it is great. And if they have to mess with the semantics to get it done, or to digest it, I'm not gonna live or die by that, and I don't think they will. I'd rather have someone hate the word sales but execute on business development than not try at all, because the word is too scary or the idea is too scary. So at the end of the day, lawyers know now more than ever that your value as a lawyer is, yes, based on how good you are, but then right next to that, even above it sometimes, is what's your book of business? How much business do you have? Do you have your own clients? And I can tell you, if you're looking for a job as a lawyer and you talk to a recruiter, the very first question that recruiter is going to ask is, what's your book of business? What are you bringing with you that's of value to this other firm? So it's really been, in the last 10 years in particular, a critical time for lawyers to get serious about growth and driving their own clients. And, sales is going to be a big component of that, like it or not.
Yeah, love that. All right, so let's talk about this conversation of sales, business development, whatever we're going to call it. And what do you think if we, I'm sure that there's a number of places we can go, but what is the number one thing that you see when you're working with clients that is to the detriment of the lawyer, that's causing them to lose sales in those conversations where they're trying to get that client?
Well, I think It's all about process. I mean, anything in business that's successful leads back to having a good process. And I think we would all agree that winging it is not necessarily a solid process. And so if the easiest example I can give you is imagine that you're in a trial for the first time, you're going to run a trial. My guess is that it's not going to be perfect, that there's going to be mistakes, that there's going to be depositions that were messed up or questions that were missed, that you might say something to the judge that you shouldn't have said. And if you continue to have that same lack of experience and lack of knowledge, lack of process, 10 years later, you're still running the same trial that you ran day one, you're probably not going to be a very successful lawyer. And so business development is much the same. You can go out and just wing it and just hope, and you can just crush hours to get business development done to bring in those clients. But the reality is that if you're not learning anything, if you're not improving, if you're not following a process, then you're just spinning your wheels. And again, for some people that works out, they get lucky, or they just work sheer force and effort. And others decide they want to work smarter, whether that's hiring a coach like myself, bringing in a mentor, reading books, listening to podcasts to get ideas. But it is really about process, and not only about how to find business, but then how to lock up the business, and then also how to stay top of mind with those clients and build that loyalty. Because if you work that hard to get a client and then you lose it because you're not paying attention, that's a real pickle too. Because how hard was it to get that client, and now you're not paying enough attention? So there's a couple components there, but it's all should be process driven. And of course, for 95+% of the attorneys, it's not. They're just out winging it, which is what I'm trying to change.
Right. And everything they wing everything, right? Even how they couch what they're going to be charging, what their fee structure is going to be, might be different from one conversation to the next. So when you look at the process, I'm sure that can be a gazillion things that go into this process. What are the core components of that process that an attorney should have if they say, okay, I get it. I buy into this idea that I need to have a system in place that I'm going to follow for every single lead, so that I can A, be successful more of the time, but B, I can also hone in on where the breakdown is. Like if I'm following this process and I'm losing people at a certain point in the process, then now I've been able to identify where I might be doing something that's hurting me.
Yeah, one of the most basic things that I do with my clients gets them the greatest return, and that is developing a plan that lays out what some of the planning stages are to be successful, like who you're going to target, what are you going to say or ask, how are you sort of planning to go to market, and then what are you doing to execute to make that happen, and then what are you doing to follow through, as I just mentioned. But within those steps, the planning is so critical, because that's where lawyers they struggle, because they don't have the targets in mind. They don't understand that they need to get their database in front of them and look at the relationships and look at the opportunities and weigh them out, because you might need a different approach for someone different. For example, if my best friend owns a company or is the general counsel of a company and we've never done business together, but we could, my approach might be very different than someone that I need to, try to get on a panel that's, a distant relationship that I've got to develop. So I need to consider in the plan, what's the breakdown of planning elements, execution elements, and follow-through elements. The other thing that I do is I help my clients put together a tracking form. And the tracking form, how many emails do you need to send out a day, a week, a month? How many meetings do you need to have with the right people? What is the conversion? And what I mean by conversion is having meetings is wonderful, but if nothing ever comes from them, you just had a meeting and now it's gone, and then you move on to the next meeting, and then that's gone. And this is what lawyers do, because that's how they build business, but it doesn't really get them where they want to go. So my point in working with my clients is, all right, you had a meeting. What did you give? What did you get? What was promised? What's the next step? How did you walk that friend through to find a name or to make an introduction that's going to be quality? And then how did that convert to actually getting in front of a prospective client? And if we see that all these meetings are happening, but no conversions, well, how long do we want to let that go? And the answer is as short as possible. So if I look at 30 days of information data, right? So then I can give direct feedback on what needs to be improved in order for that lawyer to get better results with their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a whole bunch of things in there and packed with information. And I want to go back and maybe unpack some of it. So right at the beginning, you said that you got to know, who you're targeting and how basically how are you starting these conversations. That's the marketing piece, right? Is that really what we're talking about there? I see
I
you
mean,
shaking your head. So
well,
clarify
so
that for me.
yeah, because it is marketing and it's also business development, and they're not apart. They're together. The marketing should target, who is your end user, your prospective client, and a real estate lawyer's prospective target is going to be different than a big time corporate lawyer, right? That's working at a big firm. So who are the targets that you're looking to get in front of? That's one thing you want to consider for marketing. And by the way, for business development, those are the people you want to meet with, right? The other is who's also in front of those targets. So again, that could be CPAs, that could be consultants, that could be people in high tech. And those are the people that may have the keys to the castle as it relates to getting you in front of those end users, those prospects that could do business with you. So I can't tell you how many lawyers I talk to that don't have any real idea or understanding of who their targets are. And so then how do you get business if you don't really, how do you get business efficiently, I should say, if you don't have those targets top of mind, front and center, right in front of you every day?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is this more of a one-to-one, like I need to be having individual meetings with these targets, or is this like, talking about how I need to be on social media or writing blog posts in that arena?
I like to think of the marketing as the support mechanism for business development. So if I'm doing business development without any marketing support, it's a lot harder than they've seen they've listened to my podcast, they've seen me on a video, they get my newsletter, they've seen me on social media and they commented on a post that I made. Well, that may not get me the business. Okay. But when I eventually meet that target and that target can identify me as a top player in my field, whether I'm a lawyer, I'm a marketing expert, or a business development coach, that's going to bring it all together to make that meeting so much better because I've already got the validation. Oh, I see a copy of my book on their desk or one of my books, right? Like that's going to give me such a leg up above the competition. So we have to put marketing and business development together. But I'm still targeting the same people. Just one is through one to many, and then the business development's one to one. So, but they have to work hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think the underlying thread in this conversation is you need to be niched down. You need to
Yeah.
have not just a practice area that you're in, but a clientele that you serve that is specific. I was talking to an attorney recently, and and his business is 100% for the one of the departments in a city where he's representing them against the city. And that's his niche. So if somebody gets injured on the job and now they talk to their coworker and they're like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, call this attorney. He's the one who does all of us. Right. So that's his niche. And that's, he doesn't have to go anywhere else. Like that, just keep having conversations and meetings with people in that department and make sure everybody knows who you are. So I think that we really need to think about, who is it that I serve, or what is my value add? What is my unique specialty that people are going to come from all over the place to work with me? So either you work with everybody, but you have such a niche specialty that people are just going to come and find you, or you have a very specific clientele that you serve, even though you're in a very highly competitive space.
Yeah, and some people may not need to niche down quite as much because maybe there's something else that's unique about them that generates their top of mind, word of mouth marketing message. So, for example, I've got a guy I know who is like some amazing networker, like he's just the master networker. So he doesn't have to niche down because everybody knows this guy and he does a really good job of giving and helping and putting himself out there. So his brand is just locked and loaded, and he's a general litigator. So he can do whatever, and he can bring in business that has nothing to do with him for his firm because he's able to get in the door being known as this great networker. So there's definitely something to be said about niching down, and then also thinking about what else might make you interesting or make you relevant to the community that you serve. So lots of different things. A lot of lawyers come to me with, help me niche down, and I'm certainly open to doing that. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight. Sometimes we have to do it over a period of time, like I did, to really identify that there's enough business there, the right business there, the right kinds of people, and that that space well enough to be comfortable to say to everyone else, I'm not doing this anymore, or this is my focus now. And not everybody's ready at this very moment to do that. But I think it's something that you want to consider working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, I mean, even what I do, I mean, I serve lawyers like you do. You're niched in that you do sales, at least that you're clear on that. And I'm more broad, right? I work with any attorney, any practice area, and I help them with growing their law firm. So, I mean, I could be having conversations with them about sales. I could be having conversations with them about their marketing, their staffing, and it's all over the place. So even I myself am not practicing what I'm preaching at this stage of my business growth. And part of it is because I'm still finding my way, right? I'm still figuring out which parts of that do I like, where am I seeing the best results, who's having the most fun working with me, so that I can figure out whether I want to hone in on one of those areas, or get more focused, or continue to be a generalist solution in a specific industry. So I am niched to that extent, but I'm not super niched. And I think that niching is kind of like a funnel, right? You can limit it at a high level, or you can really get deep down and limit it at a lower level. And you don't necessarily need to find that super tight niche at the bottom when you're first starting out, or even in the middle of your journey. But over time, you naturally will find that there's certain places that there's a magnetism for you to be in that, and that's when you become more of a specialist in that area.
Yeah, and that's how the most well-known attorneys do it. I mean, they find that niche. I mean, I interviewed someone recently on my podcast who Ken Levinson. I mean, he's in personal injury, but he does big truck accidents. Well, that's pretty specific. I mean, there's how many different types of injuries and accidents and things are there, and he's focusing on this one, but he's going to make a lot more money doing that than being everything to everybody. And he's getting the right kinds of cases because people know that he can service that type of business, that type of situation, I should say, better than someone else. And I've mentioned on a number of occasions, I was in a bad plane crash. That's a whole other episode, by the way. When I was in my 20s, and I got on the phone with Bob Clifford here in Chicago, and everybody in Chicago knows Bob Clifford, top aviation injury attorney in the country, definitely in Chicagoland. And so why am I talking with him? Well, he's the only person my father, would have me speak with, right. And he gets the best results. So it all makes sense. And you just have to get rid of that mentality or fear of loss and have more of an abundance mentality. And that's sometimes not a switch that can be flipped, easily, but it is a good switch to flip if you can do it. And again, the easiest way to do that is to focus on working in an industry or working in a practice area, building up the truck injury space. And then once you get comfortable that you have enough of it, you're the best at it, then you're going to be more comfortable to niche down to it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that my folks are sitting here listening and saying, well, don't hold out on us. What happened with your plane accident? Do you have that story laid out in a podcast episode of your own that we can point our listeners to, or do you want to talk about it now?
I think I may have done that in an earlier episode. I know that it's in my book, Sales Free Selling. I mention it, but I'm happy to give the quick Reader's Digest version, which is, one of my best friends at the time was a pilot flight instructor, and he took a bunch of us up in Wisconsin, Eagle River, Wisconsin, which is just gorgeous, from Chicago. And we water skied and jet skied and have like the best day or two we've ever had. Coming back, we were, short of our destination, and the engine started to sputter, scary, but okay, it happens. The pilot knows what to do. So flips tanks, the gas in these small planes is a 6-passenger Cherokee Piper, keeps a lot of the fuel in the tank, in the wings. That's where the fuel is kept. And so he flips tanks, and sure enough, we get our engine back and we're all like relieved and okay, thank God and all that. And then about 10 minutes later, it starts sputtering again. And we're 5,000 feet up. It's 10 o'clock at night. There's no visibility. It starts to rain. Holy mackerel. So my job becomes the, caregiver of everyone on the plane, trying to keep everybody calm. And, it's like that movie Airplane where you have to slap somebody to keep them calm. I don't do that, but that's the joke. But we never get our engine back, and it's just scary as hell. And the pilot, to his credit, was able to get us down near the ground. So it's not like a lawn dart going straight down like a missile, right? This is something where you can drift for quite a ways. And he eventually banked a turn and tried to land us on a street in a small suburb, a suburb of Chicago called Crystal Lake. And sure enough, we're right down to land, and he clips the right wing on a curb. And so we don't have a good landing. We have a very, very bad landing, meaning we flip upside down, we slam into a bunch of cars into someone's house. So we literally went into someone's house in their garage, and the plane didn't explode. Well, why didn't the plane explode? Because there was no
fuel.
Yeah. So sure enough, pilot error. And so I wake up, knocked unconscious, wake up, and the plane is split in half. And essentially my left arm and my left leg are dislocated and broken above my body. My right arm is smashed, my knees, ribs, I can barely breathe. And they have to get me out of the plane. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but my girlfriend, that was very serious at the time, had a very, very serious injury, much worse than mine, if you can believe it. And she, including a traumatic brain injury. So she got choppered to a hospital right away. I went to a local hospital, and she was in a coma for 2 weeks. I was, awake and moving, but not well. Broke both my arms and my legs. So they put me back together, like, taking a pretzel apart and putting it back together. And we all survived. My girlfriend, had some recovery, but never fully. It was very devastating to me, and even more so to her and her family. And, this is one of those moments where it really defines your life, in the sense that when you have a near-death experience, and some people have, whether you're walking across the street and almost get hit by a car or something like that, this was as real as it gets. Most people don't survive a plane crash, just flat out. I mean, when I see that on the news, any survivors, either the pilot lands it or everyone's done. And so it's one of those moments where you just take recognition of how precious your life is, how precious every day is. And most people don't have that experience like I did at an early age, 26 years old. But there's a moment where you go, you know what? I want to have fun in this life, but I also want to make sure that I live the best life I can live, because you get one shot. And from that moment forward, I was much more serious about my family, much more serious about my business. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. How quickly could I get into my own gig, et cetera? And then how can I add value for others in their lives? And that really is what I've been doing. And all of my clients would tell you that I take their business and their success serious as anybody, as serious as a heart attack, that they're going to get results working with me, because that's how I get fulfilled. That's how I want to leave things, is that I've left things better than when I started. But that's sort of the shortest version of it. Very traumatic, but also, uplifting in many ways for me and for, my story. So I appreciate you're listening to it. I know it's kind of a downer a little bit in some ways, because it was pretty tragic.
Not at all. I mean, it's an incredible story. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a paramedic.
I did not know that.
Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. # delegate your way to freedom. To learn more, go to profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justin Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI.
As I'm listening to the story, I'm imagining getting called to your crash, and I know exactly what's required to extricate somebody. I can tell you in our field, we call it the pucker factor. If the tones go off and they tell you it's a plane crash, that's when you're like, your sphincter tightens up and you're like, oh shit. That's it, right?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So, credit to the pilot for getting us down, but no credit to the pilot for not refueling
you in that situation in the first place, right?
Yeah. And just my life would be, I would have a completely different life. I don't know if it would be better, worse, different, or anything, but life just throws things at you and you have to step up and meet the moment. And again, you get pushed down, shoved down, people have it down and out, COVID, all this stuff going on. And how are you responding to it? How are you getting up? How are you making things better? And that's really what I think defines us in our lifetimes is not what happens to us, but how we respond. So that could be the takeaway from this, from me to your audience.
Yeah. And I think that it's really important to recognize that when we go through a crappy situation, and it doesn't have to be where you almost lost your life, right? But even, losing a job or, a fire, an accident, anything like that, when we look at it, we're in the moment. It's like, it's the worst thing ever to have that happen to you. And when you're going through it, it's awful. But if we look back at those things, we're always better off for it. Like, we look at the direction that we took and what, where it led us after that. And we would never have gotten there had it not been for that thing occurring. And I don't know anybody who hasn't been better off on the other side of it. And I think that that's really important to look at, because even listening to this podcast right now, some of you might be in really challenging situations in your law firm where you feel like, why are you being tested like this? And just know that you're going to look back on this exact moment one day, and you're going to be like, wow, that really is what made me successful, because I had to navigate through that, because I had to figure that thing out. I think it's an incredible lesson. And I'm happy that you're here, Steve, to talk about it and have this conversation and tell us that story.
Yeah. Obviously me too. And it's been a wild ride, and literally and figuratively. But at the end of the day, look, everybody, we've got, again, this one life to live, and you don't want to look back and regret. So, whether that's relationships with family and that's broken up, or, over something stupid, or that your business isn't on the right path, and, bring in people to help you. You don't have to be alone in a lot of this stuff. I had a therapist very early on come in. I was having nightmares. I was waking up in screaming, 2-3 days in, when I kind of woke up off the drugs, and I was then going into shock because of all the damage that had been done. And I had to talk it out with somebody. I needed to cry and let it out and talk to this therapist. And then from that moment forward, it was out of my psyche, and it had been verbalized, and then I could move on. And I have no problem getting in a small plane. I have no problem flying. I feel like I'm a big lucky charm. So if someone's on the plane with me, they're actually in better shape than if they're not.
Right.
But
don't worry, I've survived a plane crash. You're good.
yeah, the first plane I ever got on after the fact was with, there was about 20 nuns on the plane. I said, well, this is a sign. I don't know what kind of sign, but some kind of sign. So anyway, I am blessed to be here, and I'm blessed to be able to, help people in the way that I do. And, that's kind of what this whole ride's about, if you think about it. And so we just have to consider, how we want to live our lives in the best way we can.
Yeah, and this is it's something that I focus on a lot. So when I do a program called the 90-day law firm turnaround, and it's a 90-day group coaching program where I take attorneys through the process of getting really, really clear on what is the plan for their firm, so that they actually have a map and something they can execute on, and they're not just taking day by day. So when they join that program, I send them a few books, to read throughout the course of the 90 days. And the very first book that I asked them to read is a book called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. And I don't know if you've had the chance to read it, but Living Forward walks you through a process to create your life plan. And I think that it's super important for people to think about that, because we naturally don't think every day, oh my gosh, today could be my last. What am I doing today to make my life meaningful? You don't have to think that every day, but you do have to plan, not just your business, but you have to plan your life. You have to know one of the exercises in that book, and folks, we'll link up in the show notes a link for you to go and purchase that if you want to buy the book Living Forward. It's a great read. It's a very short read, but there's exercises in it. So you want to make sure that you're reading it at a time or a place that you can go through these exercises. One of the exercises that they have in there is for you to write your own eulogy. And when you start to think about, what do I want people to say about me when I'm not here anymore? That really starts to put things in perspective. Like, what do I want to be known for? What do I want? Like, what is the impact that I want to leave, that I want people to say? And it could be simple things like, he was nice. Maybe I need to stop being not nice so that people can say I was nice, right? He was always happy. He always made other people feel good. Even things like that, the little things that we do in life day to day, if we go through this exercise and start to think about, what do we want somebody to say? Unfortunately, I was just at a funeral for a firefighter who died in a fire locally here in Rockland County. I was on that job, so it was very personal to me. And I went to the funeral. And I mean, they said the most beautiful things about him, how outgoing he was, and how much he helped other people. And I was just sitting there thinking, and like, what if this was a firefighter who was a total a-hole, right? What would they be saying about him up here at this funeral, right? And it really got me thinking, like, we have to think about these things when we're going through life, if we care. If you don't care what people say about you, and you just want to, the world's here for me, I'm going to live it. I'm going to take what I want. I don't think my listeners would even relate to that, but you probably are not that way. You probably care. You probably want to leave an impact. So read the book, Living Forward, make your life plan, so that you're not 20 years down the road, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever your time is, you're not there at the end and looking back and saying, what did I do with my life? All I did was work. I didn't even enjoy the life, let alone do something to be impactful. You don't want to be there. So I think it's just a reminder. This story is a reminder that you don't know how much time you have, and you don't need to live every day in fear that that's your last day, but you do need to be purposeful so that you can be happy or content if today was your last day.
Yeah, I mean, it's all been put into perspective in the last year as well, Moshe. I mean, more people have been thinking about their lives and thinking about their family now more than ever. So, I think sometimes it takes different triggers for people to sort of snap out of the grind, or snap out of their the mindset that they're in, and start thinking about their people and others, and how they're going to leave their mark. And everybody's going to do it differently. But for me, I just love meeting great people like yourself, and I love to help people and help my clients and take care of my family and make sure that they're well provided for. And at the end of the day, when the eulogy happens at some point, I won't be around, but hopefully some kind words are spoken.
Right. And the word that they use in the book is drift, right?
Drift.
That mode that you're in.
Yeah.
When you don't have a plan, you're just kind of going through life. They call it the drift. It's a great read. So go get the book Living Forward by Daniel Harkavy, Michael Hyatt. And let's rein this conversation back into the sales process, because I do want to cover the rest of the things that you mentioned. So you said at the beginning, somebody should focus on who they're serving, and then once they do that, remind us what those next steps are, and then we'll dive into those.
Yeah. So for like your own efforts, not marketing per se, although this impacts marketing, but your own efforts, your own time that you're going to put out there to get business, to go and find a general counsel, a CEO, someone that could do business with you. Yeah. Obviously you want to identify who those targets are by location, by industry, by title, by size, by whatever. And then also who is aligned with those people. So again, who's coming across and doing business with those people, or who's has a similar business. So for example, there's different types of law that intersect. So for example, estate planning and family law intersect, right? Because people that have family that need divorces need estate plans, or people
Right.
that do personal injury. That might also then, coordinate with estate planning, because now people are coming into money. Well, what are they doing with that money and how are they protecting it? So you want to consider who the strategic partners would be that are most well aligned. So for example, for me, any person that's dealing with lawyers, so you, Moshe, and others that we've had on our shows, right? They're people that are doing things for lawyers, but differently than what we do. And in some cases, by the way, I'm even collaborating with my direct competitors because we're in different markets or because we have different deliverables. That's all fine, but they're in front of the same or similar type of people. So those are the other kind of targets that we're looking for. And then how do we invest our time, meeting with them and moving the ball forward? Once we've established, and let's say we've gotten an introduction to a prospective client, let's say it's a CEO of a company and you're a corporate attorney that can do a ton of transactional work, then we need to have a system for how we're going to walk a buyer through a buying decision. Now, most lawyers know, oh yeah, I went on a pitch meeting. So what does that imply? A pitch meeting, when you hear that, Moshe, what do you think that is? A pitch meeting?
Well, it sounds like I am trying to get them to buy something.
Yeah. So I've got to go and tell my story. I've got to go sell them on my firm. I've got to sell them on my background. I've got to go convince someone to do something with me. And my whole methodology goes completely counter to that. I don't think buyers want that at all anymore. Now, they will tell you they want that because really what they want is free consulting and information and pricing. I mean, that's what every buyer wants. If you're going to buy something, anything that's of decent value, you're going to go at it to try to make sure you don't get taken advantage of or screwed over or pay more than someone else. If I buy a Tesla, I want the same price as everyone else on that Tesla. And if there's a rebate, you're sure enough, I want it. So as buyers, that's how we're built. The problem with that is sellers are trying to sell, buyers are trying to buy. They each have their own model, and they're very combative. The seller wants to close the deal. The buyer wants free consulting and everything under the sky without having to commit. So what I'm teaching is how do we walk a buyer through a buying decision so that it's a fit? That's really what everyone is looking for. They just don't know how to articulate it. So I teach my clients a step-by-step process, which is it's not brain surgery, it's common sense. However, they don't know what the steps are. They don't know what the language is. They don't know what the questions are, so they can't execute on it. And even when they do execute on it, we continue to work it and make it better and better and better until they've got a very sharp saw. And then I can send them back out into the wild. But these steps include simple things like, how do you build a stronger relationship to build that trust and likability? Are you setting an agenda for the meeting, or are you just having a meeting that can go any which way? So I'm teaching them specific steps, and within those steps, there are steps, right? Or discovery. How are you asking questions instead of pitching or presenting? What are you doing to diagnose that client's needs? And how deep that rabbit hole goes? Where's the pain? Where's the urgency that to change law firms? Well, that's not going to happen through the pitch. That's the old school way. That's the sizzle of the steak we talked about in sales, 100 years ago. Today, it's not about the enthusiasm of the pitch. It's about the quality of the questions. It's about the listening. It's about the empathy. How are you taking all that and then give a very pointed presentation if and when that comes up. So these are
Right.
all the things, again, they never learn in law school. And many of them are just out there just trying to figure it out on their own when, quite frankly, whether it's my books or my programs, they're going to learn that type of stuff.
Right. So the way I understand it, and I teach this as well, is you need to uncover what is the reason that they should need to take action on this right now, because you have to be able to answer that question, right? So if you're an estate planning lawyer, you brought them up a few times. If you're an estate planning lawyer, a person can get their estate plan done at any point in time. So if you just tell them, hey, procrastinating on your estate plan means that you're leaving your family unprotected. Great. All right. I left my family unprotected for the last 40 years. What's another 3 weeks? Why should I make my decision today? Right. So if you can't figure out yourself how to compel somebody to feel the urgency to make a decision right now, then ask them. And you're obviously not asking them that question, but ask them enough questions so that you can now turn it around to them and say, hey, you remember you shared with me that this daughter that every time that you talk to her, you butt heads, and you want to make sure that she understands your wishes, and she's taken care of a certain way. Well, we're going to resolve that for you. You're not going to have to lose sleep for one more night because we're going to resolve that for you. So you now have gotten the ammunition by asking them the questions in order to be able to come back to that conversation with that response. The other thing is you have to start thinking about what are the reasons that somebody is going to say no, or I'm not sure, right? Those are called objections, right? I don't know if you use the word objections, but so in interviewing them, you can also help uncover what those objections are so that you can now prepare yourself to respond to them in a way that you're resolving those objections. If you remove each of the objections, there's no reason for them to say no anymore. There's no hesitation because you've resolved them. So if you have hesitation or somebody still wants to think about it, there's still objections that you haven't uncovered or that you haven't adequately resolved. Now, Steve, do you do anything to help people understand or outline what those objections are? And how do you, I like to call them objection busters, where you have, if you're worried about how you're going to come up with the money, we've got this solution. We've got this payment plan. We've got this thing that's going to help you do that. If you're worried about whether this is worth it for you, we've got flat fee pricing so that you don't have to worry about an open-ended ticket. And you go through all those different objections and say, here, this is why we have the perfect solution for you.
Yeah. So here's the interesting, part of what I'm teaching and sort of the secret sauce is when I'm working with lawyers to help them walk buyers through buying decisions, the questions are so involved that you learn a lot of the objections before they come up. You understand their budget. You understand how they make a decision. You understand their urgency because the questions allow for it. So just to give an example, I mentioned starting off with, building a strong relationship where there's likability and trust. Well, that foundation allows us to set an agenda and allows us to ask permission to ask questions that might be tougher questions. So back to your point about the estate planner, that estate planner could ask questions about that daughter. And instead of hearing a potential issue and then solving it, they might say, well, tell me more about that. Or do you have an example of a time where she was uncontrollable and went against your wishes? And see again, how deep that, so our instincts as business professionals is to solve. And I'm like breaking horses with lawyers to get them to stop solving. And it's not forever. It's about don't solve now. Think about it like this. If I'm looking to go scuba diving, okay. And I don't know if you've ever done that. You look like someone who's scuba.
I have gone once scuba diving.
Okay. All right. I've gone 3 times. And what if you just stayed at the level of the water, okay, and just hovered 5 and 6 feet under the water? Well, that's called snorkeling, right? But if you want to go deep under the water where all the cool stuff is, you gotta go down there. You gotta keep digging down and follow the bubble up and take your time going down. And what I'm teaching lawyers is how to ask questions that's going to get the prospective client to share things they may not have told anyone, right? To really uncover the 3 motivators for making a decision. I'll give you those motivators. It's pain, right? People that are in pain need to change fast. There's fear about the future and fear about what could happen if they don't change. And then it could also be gain. And gain is the weakest of the 3, but it's still a factor. Some people hire me, they're making more money than they know what to do with. They still hire me because they know they should be making more or doing more, right? So there's no pain there, but there's a lot of gain. And some other lawyers I talk to, they're leaving so much money on the table that they're not able to take a family vacation, or they're not able to get out of doing doc review, or they're not able to really live the life they want to live. And they're in pain. And if I don't get all that out on the table, the urgency for them to change is much lower. So as a lawyer, you want to consider, following some steps that allows you to get to the bottom of something, and then continue to ask what I call qualifying questions, which is you've qualified that they have a reason to change. They've verbalized that with you in great detail. Now you can ask a commitment question like, is this a should, could, or really a must fix for you to take action on? And someone that now feels that motivation to get that estate plan done would say, yes, this is something we should have done years ago. We need to take action on it right away. Well, that's a good buying signal, right? We need to take action on it right away. Now, the next one might be, do you have all the decision makers? Are you just meeting with the husband, or the husband and the wife together? Well, if you're only meeting with one, that might be a mistake, right? So, but they're both there and they say, yeah, no, we want to move forward on this fast. And then do they have the money, the wherewithal to pay for this estate plan? Well, hopefully if you've asked good questions, you've identified that they have money in the bank and they make a good living. Well, and then but also are they willing to spend some money, 2, 3, 5 grand, whatever it might be, to get that estate plan done today? If everything lines up, first of all, where are the objections? There's no objections because you know everything, right? And then what's your presentation? What's your pitch? By the way, there may not even be one other than let's get this going, or here's my engagement letter. Let's get this going.
Are you ready? And that might be it.
So we're taking something from making the pitch the emphasis to making the process of questioning, listening, empathy, understanding the emphasis. And that's something lawyers can enjoy, because when you take the pressure of the pitch away, now it's just about learning about somebody. It's about asking good questions. It's about being a trusted advisor. And that's going to be more in line with what lawyers really want to do anyway. But they just don't know that that's the way to do it because they've never gone through any kind of real formal training. So that was a lot I just said there for you.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And it was great. I like when you start to give the specific examples and the specific words of the questions, because now our listeners can kind of wrap their heads around it and be like, okay, it's not theoretical. I can actually see myself doing that in that conversation. So yeah, that was great. So we're just about out of time, Steve, and I want to kind of put a bow on this conversation. So law firm owners are our audience. They clearly need to make sales, no matter what stage they're at. They have to be closing sales. What is the steps that they need to take to kind of processize their sales process? And is it something that they can figure out on their own, or do they need to hire somebody like you to navigate through it?
I mean, I have 3 books on the subject. I've got my podcast. I've got my videos on YouTube. So I have all the content out there, but it doesn't even come close to scratching the surface of what I'm able to do with a client one-on-one and in a group session. Because I do group training with attorneys all over the country and also one-on-one. And when we combine that, we get great results. But it would be the equivalent of me saying, yeah, I want to be a scratch golfer. I'm going to go read a couple books on the subject. So yeah, you can learn some things about, how to stand or how to swing, but it's not the same as spending 6 months out with a pro on the course. So everybody's going to do it differently. I'm absolutely not a fit for everybody. I would say people that are in the top 5%, not of book size, but of attitude, of coachability, of open-mindedness, and they're ambitious.
Right.
That's who I work with. If you don't have those qualities, I'm probably not a good fit, because the way I see it, I'm only as good as my player. Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson looks great because he's got Michael Jordan, and together they're a powerhouse, right? We can do this all day with different coaches and different players. But I need that player. If I don't have that player, then then who am I coaching and how are we going to get results together? So that's really it. So I'm either putting people through that type of a program, or I'm putting them through, like, they've already been through a program like that or something, and I'll put them in a mastermind group or a peer advisory group of other successful attorneys where they can learn from each other. And some attorneys would prefer to do that, not have a coach, but work with other attorneys that are successful and have that kind of accountability and that kind of education through their peers. And so I'm really, juggling, putting people in one of those two kinds of programs. And again, sending some people copies of my book and saying, look, it may not be a fit, but let me try to help you any way I can. I'm fine with that. I'm just not, I'm one person. I don't have the access to work with, thousands of people other than through my education content and books, et cetera.
Right. Now, you've written 3 books on the subject. Are they, is it basically getting better each time, or are they totally different topics they're covering? Which book should somebody start with if they say, hey, I want to dive into this, I'm going to read Steve's book?
So if you like the thing I was talking about earlier about sales-free selling, where you're walking a buyer through a buying decision, there's a book called Sales-Free Selling, and it's actually an interesting book in the sense that it's written as a story. So if you think it would be easier for you to digest my content by reading a story about 3 characters that are in different businesses. One's a lawyer. They meet a coach named Scott. It's me, whisper, it's me. But that's a great book to learn sales-free selling, or at least to get the fundamentals of what it's all about. The second book is the Attorney's Networking Handbook. Clearly, that's all about helping attorneys be more effective in their networking. So writing an infomercial, targeting, how to attend events, virtual or live, how to work a conference, what questions should you be asking people in a one-on-one meeting? How do you get results from that? That's book number 2. And then more recently is The Ambitious Attorney. And this is a mix of all topics, from marketing to cross-marketing to time management. And it's essentially a compilation of all of my Chicago Daily Law Bulletin articles over 3 years in one book. Highly recommend you get that. And I'll be putting out a second edition, probably in the next 6 months on that, with another couple of years. So you may want to wait, or you might want to not wait, but it's up to you. I'm also very open to sending ebooks. If somebody says, I don't want to pay for the book, but I'd love to get a copy, or I'd love to just have the ebook. I don't really do books anymore, paper books, then I'm happy to just email you the books. If you want to reach out to me, it's steve@fretzin.com. I'll just say, hey, send me 1 or all 3. Happy to do it.
All right. And we'll link that up in the show notes, folks, so that you have Steve's email address. Steve, thank you so much for sharing. Last question. If you have one piece of advice to give to our audience, and your parting wisdom before we sign off, what would that be?
I would say, if you're an attorney and you're looking to have a long, sustainable career with wealth and freedom, you're going to want to consider now more than ever that you need to build a book of business, whether you're doing it through marketing, branding, business development, however you get it done. Consider that you don't want to be at risk of losing your job or losing, 20 years in, you realize, I don't have any of my own clients. And I just think it's not a great position to be in, especially if you're 65 and you're at the tail end, it's probably okay. But if you're 35, 40 years old, you should be thinking about building your own book, hands down, bar none, if you want to be someone that's going to have a real career in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. This has been a great conversation, especially with an extra story, a near-death experience story embedded in the middle. I knew that this would be fun, and we didn't let our listeners down. So I really appreciate the time that you gave me and us, and looking forward to other ways that we can find to collaborate and help our audience with the business development and sales process. So Steve, thank you once again for being here.
Thank you, Moshe. I really appreciate it.
All right, folks, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, you want to make sure to hit that subscribe button in your podcast player, because if you don't, you won't know the next time we release an episode. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. I might have a misstep every once in a while, but we're pretty much on schedule with that. You know what to expect. On Tuesdays, it's just me. On Thursdays, I have a guest with me. And if there's one thing that you can do for us and also for yourself, is to take this episode and share it with somebody that you know can benefit from it. And by doing that, you're going to share the love, share the wealth of the information we're giving out. And if each one of you listening to this does that, then we've essentially doubled the exposure of the people that are able to benefit from this conversation. So we'd love your help in doing that. And I look forward to catching you on Tuesday. Take care.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.